it's Natalie, flyGIRL Kelley, and I am here with Paco. That's how you pronounce it?
Paco Chierici.
Paco was a fighter pilot. I mean, I've never met a fighter pilot.
You never met a fighter pilot?
No.
Wow, okay.
It's really cool, and he
Happy
did
to be
this
the first.
documentary.
Yep.
And was that your idea, by the way?
Yep.
And what
Creator and
What was
producer.
that called?
Speed and Angels.
And where can people find that?
They can find it on Amazon Prime Video for free if you got Prime, and iTunes.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
I, after talking to his wife Hillary and Paco on the phone, I immediately went to my Apple TV and started watching the program, watched the whole thing, and then got my son over, my older son, and he watched it with me, and then my mom watched it with me, and then I watched it again. What gave you the idea to do that?
Well, I was, so the documentary didn't turn out to be the documentary that we set out to make. So there's a really cool video called Last of the Dogfighters on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And that was the sizzle reel, we called it, that we went out and pitched people on the idea for both money and distribution. And that's only about the squadron that I was in. My last squadron was VFC 13, and we were just adversaries. All we did was fly this very cool airplane called the F5, and it's a really interesting squadron because all we do is fly dogfighting and air-to-air combat.
Okay.
It's up in the desert in Fallon, Nevada, so it's kind of a unique location for a Navy squadron. You know, most Navy squadrons are somewhere at least close to the ocean.
Right.
It was super fun to be there, and it was a really unique and interesting place, and I thought it would be a great documentary. And so I got a friend of mine, Peyton Wilson, a female director, wonderful director. She came out and brought her camera and instantly fell in love. I mean, it was a match made in heaven. She is a perfect person to draw out other people's personalities, and you can see that in the eventual movie that we made, Speed and Angels. And so we started, we got permission from the Navy and raised some money and started filming a documentary about dogfighters in the desert. And then at some point, we went down to Florida to interview some of the students that we were going to be teaching dogfighting against. And Peyton was in the van with Megan and Jay.
Okay.
Actually, I think it was Megan at first, and she just happened to have her camera with her, and she whipped it up and said, "Hey, what's your deal?" And Megan just came alive. I mean, she crackles with energy. She's an incredibly exciting person just to be in a van with. And Peyton quickly realized that the more exciting and fulfilling story is the story of these young kids starting from zero, just brand new flight students, and the next 9 months of their lives, such a dramatic change. They go from just little sort of floppy-eared, happy puppies to, people on the verge of going out to fight combat.
Right.
It was supposed to be an 18-month project about dogfighting, and it turned into, all in all, 5-year project about Jay and Megan, and sort of the pursuit of passion against all obstacles.
So is it true that really being a fighter pilot is about like a 10-year kind of lifespan?
Probably 12-ish years. You can, if you join the service to go be a fighter pilot and everything works out, you could kind of bet on being in the cockpit for about 12 years before you have to start peeling out and going doing, penalty laps somewhere.
Yeah. What I want to talk about is your book.
Okay.
So after we talked, here's his book here on the phone, and your wife was telling me about your book, and I read it. And so tell me, you had Megan on the documentary, and then you made sure to include, you had 2 fighter pilot females in here. Mm-hmm. Do you feel drawn in some way to include women, or what? Why
I do.
In both things did you do that?
I would say, like on a macro scale, like I've always been surrounded by really strong, intelligent, driven women. My mom was a college professor, super smart. She always inspired me. My wife, obviously, is a huge part of my life, and she's, again, very intelligent, very driven, very smart woman. I've got a great daughter, 17-year-old daughter who's going to be a senior in high school. And so, I feel compelled to tell strong stories about strong women. When I was coming up with the concept for the book, There was a woman in my last active duty fighter squadron who was one of the first 2 women to fly in combat, or in a combat squadron. Her name was Kara Hultgren, and I just hesitate because unfortunately she passed away. She crashed. She was the first woman to crash and die in a fighter plane in an active duty squadron.
That documentary, wasn't it? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. When I was trying to come up with a female character for the story, I just used Kara as an inspiration, and my thought process was, what would her career, what would her life had looked like had she lived? And she endured a lot of sexism. I mean, a tremendous amount. She was the first, right? So there was a huge resistance to her, breaking into the male world of fighter aviation.
Did you see a difference from when you started to the end of females or?
Absolutely, yeah. So, when I first started, there was no females in combat units. So my first deployment back in the early 90s was all guys, all 5,500 dudes on an aircraft carrier, and that was normal, and that's the way it had been for 75 years. And then between that and 2 years later, my second deployment, Congress passed the Combat Exclusionary Act, I think is what it was called, and all of a sudden there was at least 10%, maybe a little bit more, women on the ship at all ranks, including aviation, including aviators. I just remember one of my first times on the ship, all of a sudden there's girls there, and somebody, I'm just walking along in a daze, not really fully up to speed yet, and there's people going in both directions, and every 10 steps you got to pass over what they call knee knockers. It's about,
Oh gosh, put your
shin high, yeah.
All the time.
Oh yeah. And somebody walked by, and there was perfume in the air. I'd never smelled perfume. I should have smelled all kinds of things on a ship, but never perfume. And I turned around and smacked my shin right into one of those knee knockers. I still have a scar. I mean, I dug it out. Yeah.
Painful.
Yeah, but it was funny. It was hilarious.
Have you had any kind of response from females in the military, anything that have reached out to you about the documentary or the book?
Absolutely, yeah. So Megan, who's in the documentary, she loved the book. It was great. She was my most nervous moment, having somebody read it, because I wanted her to like it, but it's an uncomfortable book, right? It deals with some stuff that peels off some scabs.
Yeah.
But I try to be honest in my storytelling, and so I didn't know if it was going to be too much or too little, or I'm a guy, and I'm writing about men and women, and a lot of the chapters you're in Megan's head. So I'm actually writing as from a woman's point of view, which is not something I was born to do. So I was nervous about
Did you feel like you knew kind of what, based on your
I made
relationship
assumptions, and I
Okay.
talked to, I had plenty of female fighter pilot friends, and I talked to them, and I tried to do the right thing, but you never really know.
Yeah. It's not like someone that didn't actually live on a ship and was not a fighter pilot writing the book, so I knew
Right.
that the perspective was pretty accurate, I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I did have my female fighter pilot friends read it, so I felt pretty confident that it was at least in the right direction.
What are consistent traits of a good fighter pilot?
A good fighter pilot is somebody, you have to go through so much to get there. So you're driven, you're focused, and you're really goal-oriented. And then even once you become a fighter pilot, there's all these different levels that you have to achieve. There's a never-ending series of wickets for you to jump through. And that book deals with these young kids who have just become pilots going through training to become a fighter pilot. That's another 9 months of grueling, dangerous, rigorous, dramatic, exciting training where you could fail at any step, right? You only get 3 fails and then you're out. When we were doing the documentary, we came across a ton of stories of how people got to where they were. And one of the things I like to say is there's no such thing as an accidental fighter pilot. You didn't just all of a sudden wake up and you're like, sure, I'll go to flight school.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I had no military in my family to speak of really, but I need money to go to college. And somebody told me about the ROTC scholarship, and I was like, I'm in. Navy sounds awesome. I love the sea, I love boats.
Yeah.
And then my sophomore year in college, I got a backseat ride in F-14. I mean, hook, line, and
this,
sinker, I was like, that's me. I wanted to do that more than anything on earth. Whatever stage you get bitten by that bug, that's how you have to be. Because there's tons of people that want to do it,
Yeah.
and it's hard.
So what do you do now?
Now I write books.
Yeah.
And
Do you have another one you're working on?
Yeah, I'm working on another
Okay.
one right now.
What's it going to be about? Can you say?
So it's the same characters in different roles. Slammer gets shot down over Iraq and all kinds of crazy stuff happens, and he's got to find his way back to the ship.
Yeah. Have you always liked writing?
I always have, yeah. I mean, I say I was a fighter pilot for 20 years, but I've been writing my whole life, so.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to a female that's interested in a flying career or a military career, and they're just not sure that it's going to be very inviting? What would you say?
I mean, I would say, so there's still very few women that fly, and I don't know why that is, but it is a very inviting community, especially now.
Well, it has changed a lot, definitely.
It's changed dramatically in the last 25 years. So yeah, the community is very accepting and encouraging of women to fly, both military and civilian. So I would say that if you have any inkling of a desire to have a life in aviation, you should just reach out a little bit, and somebody's going to grab you and show you around and show you just how cool it is, and maybe read the book and watch the documentary, and it'll inspire you, because they both have really strong and awesome female characters and personalities.
Really did.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for meeting me.
Thank you.
It's really cool. I'm glad that it worked out. Hopefully we can work together and get more of this fighter pilot story out. I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for watching. Please check out Paco's book, Lions of the Sky, and then the documentary Speed and Angels, right?
That's correct, yeah.
It is so cool. You will love it. You will want to be a fighter pilot. You will want to take off from a carrier. You'll be hooked for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.